Since this is the first session, and I'll quickly introduce myself. So this is Vishwa, as you guys already would be knowing me. I have close to around 9 years of experience in IT field, and fortunately, unfortunately, I have been a part of the multiple companies which has worked in the diverse domains. For example, I was in Oracle, who is a giant in databases, right? And then I was into the payment industry called PayPal, which is a giant in that. Then also I briefly little work for Amazon for a month, and then I moved to Walmart Labs. So I have been part of e-commerce as well. And as of I'm working for a social media company, which is LinkedIn, right? So all the flavors that you can think of in IT industry, fortunately, I have been a part of that. So that gave me a little bit of an upper hand in understanding what are the different nuances in the IT field is, and this is what I've been doing professionally. But apart from that, I had a passion for teaching. So from the college days, from the IT days itself, I've been teaching the coachings, and then when I moved into the corporate world, I have been helping students and professionals crack their dream job. So many of my students who have taken courses from me, or either taken guidance from me, not formal or even informal ways, they are into different companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon. There's so many, right? If you follow me on the LinkedIn, you could have seen people tagging me saying that I've helped them out, because this is what I love to do and how I'm on this platform. So we're going to start this journey of data structures and algorithm, right? And our timeline is like 2.5 months, right? We'll be taking around 20-22 sessions to complete this data structure and algorithm. And when I was hearing you guys, most of you told that you are clear with the basics and you want to just add on your concepts. See, DS and algo is something which these days everybody knows, right? You will not find a single person who says that I don't know DS algo, but then again, when somebody asks you the same simple problem in the interview, you get stuck. So my whole focus of these sessions will be make you interview ready. I understand that you guys know data structures and algorithm basics, right? And even if you know everything in data structure and algorithm, nobody can guarantee that the question that will be asked in the interview you would be already knowing, right? So my whole focus through this journey will make you prepare for those unknowns, right? Even if something comes in the interview which you already don't know, still how do you go and crack it? So my whole focus will be around that to make you prepare, so that how you behave in the interview, how you react to the questions, and you give your best, you give your 100% while you're solving the problem. So this is my whole intention will be, right? And there are few expectations of mine also from you guys. uh, I want you guys to be little sincere, right? So whenever I say that you have to do these stuff before coming to the next session, I'll be sincerely expecting from you guys that you do it, because unless until you guys try hard, no matter how much effort do I put in, I don't think it will be of any use. So I'll need a little commitment from you guys that whatever assignment that I give you, whatever thing that I ask you to go and read and come back, you guys should do it, because unless until you guys try, nobody can help you. So this is one commitment that I'll be since this is the first session, this is the one commitment that I'll be expecting from you guys. And trust me, if you just follow the path that I'm asking you to do, it's not a rocket science. It's very simple, it's very straight. And trust me, there are folks I know who were not knowing even ABC of data structure algorithm, and they're doing great. They have cracked interviews like Amazon, which is one of the most data structure intensive interviews. So said that, only thing that I need is a little commitment from you, a little sincerity, and just you have to follow the thing that I'm saying you, and just do that. Don't you don't have to do anything groundbreaking or anything like that. Just devote few hours every day on the things that I ask you to do, and you will definitely see after 2.5 months of time, you'll see a different yourself. Your problem solving skill will definitely improve. You will be a better confident person, and I don't see any reason why you shouldn't get selected in any of the companies. And when I say any of the companies, it includes something like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, anything like that. Cool, makes sense. Are you guys with me? Are you guys are ready to devote next 2.5 months fully committed and a little sincere effort? Can I expect this guys from you? Can you say yes?
Absolutely, Vishwa. Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. So I'll first now go through a little structure how I'm planning to take the sessions, and then we'll get started with the today's topic. So basically, data structure, if you see, right, data structure has two parts basically. It's a unidimensional and multidimensional. Basically, data structure, if I have to divide broadly, I can divide it into the two parts, unidimensional and the multidimensional. So unidimensional will contains anything which has one dimensional data structure, for example, arrays, linked list, stack, and the queue. And the multidimensional data structure I'll talk about will be around trees, graph, and then maybe priority queues or heap, map, something like this. So basically, we can divide the whole data structure into the two parts, unidimensional and the multidimensional. We'll be starting with the unidimensional data structures. I say unidirectional data structure because in these data structures, you always move in a single direction. There's only one way that you move, right? In the multidimensional, there's no single path. There are multiple paths through which you can traverse. So that I call it the multidimensional data structure, like tree, graph, priority queue, heap, map. I understand that you guys will be already little comfortable with the unidimensional data structure, but trust me, unidimensional data structures involves more tricky questions than multidimensional data structures. Multidimensional data structures needs a little more effort to understand it at the first go, but once you know the concepts of the multidimensional data structure, it's much simpler. I must tell you, you might be a little apprehensive about the graphs as of now, but I feel graph is one of the most easiest data structure if you have to count all of them, because if your concepts are right about the graph, you can easily solve the problem. There are not many combination of the problems that can be formed in the graph, but the array, which is supposed to be most easiest data structure, it is one of the most trickiest part of the data structure. Anybody can ask you any tricky questions which will not be logical, and you'll be struggling to solve that. So the array appears to be one of the simplest data structure, but it is not the fact. It's the most trickiest data structure that you can face in any data structure algorithm questions. So this will be about the data structures, and once we cover the data structure, we'll be talking about the algorithms. In the algorithm, we can start with the string algorithms, right? And then we talk about many things like divide and conquer, backtracking, just dynamic programming. So there are so many algorithms, so many more. I'm just not listing them. I'm just listing the main things. Distance sorted, distance algorithm, and all those stuff. So there are so many algorithms that we cover after we cover the data structure things. So these are the basic two pillars. But there are few things which are common to both data structure and algorithm part, and that is one that which will be starting in the first. In the starting itself, we'll be covering those. So one of that is time complexity thing. So it is a cross-cutting concern. So it will go through for every data structure that we read and every algorithm that we solve, we'll be figuring out what the time complexity is. So the first one will be the time complexity. The second one I feel is the recursion. Now recursion again, I have been talking to many students, right? So recursion is one of the most misunderstood concepts. You feel like you know recursion, but trust me, you would not have used recursion in that as depth as I'm expecting you to do it, because I have seen most of the students, they know what recursion is, but when you ask the little nuances of recursion, that how it works internally and how you can use in the more complicated situation, they fail. So we'll be talking about recursion because this is a very important concept. I feel if you have a good hold on the recursion, the topics like dynamic programming, topic like tree, the topic like graph becomes very simple. Like 90% of the question in the tree can be solved with the recursion easily. And so is the case of the dynamic programming as well. So unless until you are not able to make a recursive function, trust me, you won't be able to solve a single problem in dynamic programming. So again, so recursion is the base of all the topics that we'll be studying in our all our coming sessions. So the recursion is something which I feel is very important concept. So we'll be understanding the recursion first as our building blocks for understanding DSNL. And the another third most important thing that will be needed all through is sorting concepts. So again, sorting is something which will be used in the different data structures and in different algorithms for solving the problems. Said that, I don't think that anybody will ask you that, okay, you write me the sorting algorithm of bubble sort, or nobody will ask you to tell me how do we write, the merge sort or the quick sort. Nobody will ask you like that. But said that, the sorting concept will be used in the n number of questions, and also the logic how you do, quick sort or how you do merge sort. Those logics will be also applied in the multiple scenarios. So that is why sorting is something which is again common to all the data structures and algorithms that we'll be teaching in the future. So this is also will be covering in the start itself, so that wherever it is needed, we are ready to apply that. Right. So these three, first, second, and third, are like pre-read or our building block for understanding data structure algorithms. So we'll be taking these three in the starting of our lectures. Right. So these are the things, topics which we are going to cover. Now, how the classes will go is that, after every session, I'll be giving you a list of the questions that I'll expect you to solve. and you have to solve those questions. Come prepared in the next session, and we'll quickly spend like 15-20 minutes of time solving those questions. Like it will be kind of daily practice paper for you. And before in the in the next session, every next session, the initial 15-20 minutes will be talking about the doubts that you had in the questions that have been given to you. So this is how we'll be try to follow the practice. Every session will be followed by a question which you will have to solve, and in every session in the starting 15-20 minutes we'll go through the doubts of all of you. We'll discuss the theory of each of the questions, and then we'll move on. So this is how we'll go. The another important thing is what is the language? I think most of you guys must be thinking that what is the language that we are going to use for this problem solving. See, to be fair to everyone, and to take a common, because we'll have to pick a common language. So for that since I try to pick a language which is very common these days, which is used across the industry most widely. So Java is a language which is used in most, like 70% of the companies these days. So I'll be using Java as a common language to solve these kind of data structure problems in the session. But to those folks who don't know Java, I don't think that should be much of a problem, because most of the time I'll be only talking about the logic. See, data structure and algorithm is not about the language, but it's more about the logic, So I'll be mostly talking about the logic. So I don't think that will be an issue for you guys to understand the code, first thing. And when you're solving the problem, you're free to solve in any language. If you're comfortable solving in JavaScript, do it in JavaScript. If you're comfortable solving in Python, I'm totally fine. You can write in Python. If you want to solve in the C#, you can do in that language as well. Most of the language I'm already comfortable with. So even if you have to share your code, mostly I'll be able to help you out. Okay. So this is about the rules, the guidance, the flow, what I'm planning for this session is. But I'm more than open to add any new content in this, any additional thing that you want to add in this coursework. Please feel free to let me know. I'll just open 1 minute of window. Any doubts around this? Any questions? Any suggestions?
Hello, Vishwa.
Yeah, tell me.
Vishwa, what about searching concepts? We're not talking about searching anywhere over here.
So I'm not actually when I say the algorithms, the searching things will also get covered. So I'm not explicitly put each of the individual topics, but don't worry, everything that you can hear in the ecosystem of data structure and algorithm, everything will be covered.
Sure.
So we'll be doing sorting, we'll be doing selection, we'll be also doing the searching. So that all will be covered as a part of the algorithms.
All right, fine.
Good. So just before I start anything, I have very basic questions. Like I just want to understand what our, where we stand. So very few basic questions. Like, do we understand what is a data structure? What is a data structure? Can anybody quickly tell me what is a data structure? How do you define the data structure?
You need to arrange the data in a specific structure, not meet the requirements for reading or writing of that particular data. For example, when you're saying a list or when you want to insert some data, you follow some structure, and when you want to read some data, you want to follow some structure.
Perfect. Anybody else? Any other views?
Yeah, it is like organizing your data in such a manner that your process is most time efficient. Like dealing with time complexity is possibly very good, and probably it's consuming the least of space.
Perfect. So yeah, so most of you guys are right. Just to put it more better perspective, see, why do we need to know data structure? Because we have to apply those in the industries. And what every industry is trying to do these days, they're trying to play with data, right? Every industry these days are saying that they're gonna do data-driven decisions. So at the back of everything, there's a data, and this data is not small. There are huge amount of data, right? It's a huge amount of data. And with any data, you do only two things. One is storage of the data, and the second one is the computation on that data, right? So when you are trying to store the data, you want to store it efficiently so that your space is optimized. You are not wasting space in storing it. And at the same time, when you're doing the computation, you want you to do it as fast as possible, because time is something which is so crucial these days. Nobody has time, and so does no machine has also time these days, right? So they have to do things very fast. So data structures help us in storing data very efficiently, and at the same time they help us to retrieve it or run computation on the top of it very fast. Now the different kind of industries will have the different kind of requirements. or the different kind of use case have the different kind of computational speed that they will be needing. So to, in order to facilitate all kind of use cases, the different kind of data structures have been formed. There could be scenarios in which I want to write it very fast, so there the data structure will be different. Somewhere I want to read it very fast, so there the data structure will be different. Somewhere I want to read in some particular order, like first in, first out. Somewhere I want to read in first in, last out, right? Sometime I want to move in a zigzag fashion and then I want to read it, right? So the different, since because of the widespread of the internet thing, everything is on net right now, and every real life problems are being solved using the technology, right? So the way we want to store the data and the way we want to fetch the data are totally different. So that is why we need to have the different kind of data structure that facilitates the data in that kind of requirement, state. So both in the terms of the storage and in the terms of the computation. So whenever you talk about the data structures, it facilitates both the things. It helps you to have a better storage capabilities, and at the same time, it also allows you to have, better computational, overheads. So this is about the data structure, what data structure is, and why do we need data structure, and how do we create and use data structure. This is what we'll be talking about more in our coming sessions. So then this is about data structure. What is this algorithm? What is algorithm? Can you anyone explain me what is algorithm and why and how do we use it?
I think it's the steps to be followed to achieve a specific solution.
Perfect. I think it's very simple. So anything that any calculated steps that you take to solve a particular problem is the algorithm, right? Now a same problem can be solved by the multiple steps, so there can be multiple algorithms for the same problem. The algorithm which takes the minimum amount of time and the resources, maybe we call that as the most efficient algorithm, right? So this is what the algorithm is. And why do we need algorithm? Simple, to solve a problem. Unless until we have an algorithm, we cannot solve it. So we need to have an algorithm to solve a problem. And how do we solve it? So there are different kind of algorithm. This is what this course is all about. So in the due course of time, we'll be talking about the different algorithms that we have. So as I said before, deeping dive into the core topics of data structures and algorithm, there are few topics which is kind of pre-read or a building block for all our coming topics and discussions. So one of the first important one is time complexity. So suppose there is a problem P, okay, and there are two algorithms, algorithm A1 and algorithm A2, right? And suppose algorithm A1 is taking T1 amount of time and A2 is taking T2 amount of time, right? And if T1 is less than T2, right? So there is the same problem. The same problem has been given to the two algorithms, algorithm A1 and algorithm A2. And A1 is taking T1 time, A2 is taking T2 time. And if T1 is less than T2, can I say A1 is better than A2 in terms of time complexity?
It depends on the environment in which these two algorithms run.
Okay, so I cannot comment that A1 is better than A2?
Yeah, definitely A1 is better than A2.
So A1 is better than A2, you're saying?
Yes.
So with this statement, you are saying that A1 is better than A2. Okay? A1 is better than A2. Okay. Sai, can you say whether Ashutosh is saying right or it is wrong? Just that.
Yeah, for me also it seems to be right only.
Okay.
Provided both of them are executed in the same environment and in the same given conditions.
Same environment. What do you mean by the same environment?
So algorithm 1 and algorithm 2 are executed in the same system or
right now, suppose you don't have that information. You only know that algorithm A1 is taking T1 time and algorithm A2 is taking T2 time. What will you say? You're not aware of the environment thing.
Okay, if I'm not aware of the environment thing, definitely I can't guarantee on A1 T1 is less than T2.
No, T1 is less than T2 this information is with you that T1 took less time than T2. Both is in the same units. Okay, so like T1 second, T2 second, T1 second is less than T2 second. So this is there with you, but can you, with that information, can you tell me A1 is better than A2?
No, that's what I'm saying. If the environment and these things are not given, definitely I'm not sure whether I could say that A1 is better than A2.
Okay, we cannot say anything about A1 and A2 because the time that an algorithm takes to execute the code depends on so many factors. Okay, so one of the factor is, as rightly said by Sai, it's environment, right? Or the operating system, or the machine on which this particular algorithm is running, right? So suppose A1 is running, the current's very, high compute intensive application, right? A multi-processor, multi-core machine. And suppose A2 is running in a 10 years old single core machine, which memory is also less, right? And all those things, right? So definitely the, the operating speed or the operating cycle of the A1 will be more than A2. This is one, dependency on which the time it takes to run the algorithm depends. The another will be the language of the choice, right? So you'll be knowing that anybody who's doing a competitive programming where there's a neck for the time, people use it mostly C++ because it's very time optimized. But if you write the same code in Python, it will take little more time. So it also depends on the kind of language that you're using to write the algorithm. The time may vary, right? So the total time taken by any algorithm to execute the steps depends on so many factors. It depends on what operating system you are running that, what kind of processors are involved, what kind of language that are using, right? So many things, right? So just looking at the time, we can never comment whether one algorithm is better than the another algorithm. So if we say that time complexity is the measure of time taken by an algorithm to execute it, this is a wrong statement. So time complexity cannot be determined just based on the time taken by the algorithm to run it. Because time complexity is a general concept. If an algorithm has a better time complexity, it should be better on every operating system. It should not be my computer it was better, and if I run it in your computer, its performance will go down, right? If it is a better algorithm, it should work on every operating system, right? So that is why time complexity is, as most of folks have a misconception that time complexity is related to the time taken by the algorithm, but it's not the case. So what is time complexity then? So a very simple definition of time complexity is, the time complexity is, how many number of operations a given code has to do proportional to the input size. So for example, if I write a function like this, public void print main int n, and inside this I write a for loop for n I equals 0, I is less than n. I do SOP. SOP just means system out of print. So I'm doing, say, hello world. Right. So what the time complexity definition says is that based on the input size, how many operations are happening inside the code or a given block of code. So here you see that this method has an input size n. Now based on the input size, I am doing how many operations? Based on the input size, I'm also doing n number of operations. So if my number of operations are proportional to the input size, I say that my time complexity is linear. So basically, time complexity is how number of operations, number of business logic that you're executing inside a function is dependent on the input size. So if this, I have to say, I just call it order of n. See, in the time complexity, again, if you go down, there's so many things like asymptotic analysis, big O, small o, medium o, average, worst case, best case, right? But those all things are not needed actually. We just need to understand practically, because I don't want to go into theoretical, but the practical aspect, so that you are actually able to solve the problem and understand the complexity thing. So the only thing that you need to understand is that, what is time complexity? A time complexity is how the number of steps that any functions will, undergo proportional to the size of the input. So here, if I have to say the number of operations is directly proportional to the input size, so I say that the time complexity is order of n. If suppose I didn't have this loop, so I take another example, okay, and I didn't have any loop here. I just had a simple SOP statement. Okay. Can you tell me what will the time complexity in this case?
It will be a constant time.
Will be
constant time.
Will be constant, because it doesn't depend on the size of input, whether n value of n is 1, whether value of n is 100, whether n value of n is 1 million. Whatever the bigger size of the input you take, the number of operation is only the execution of one line of code, which is printing Vishwa. So the time complexity will be O of n. Okay. Let's now take this definition to a little further. And
Vishwa,
yeah,
what if we write the system dot of println n number of times? So both the methods will be same.
yeah. So if you do this like n number of times, okay. So the time complexity will become you are doing n number of operations for the input size based on the number of input that you are taking. Then the time complexity order of n itself. Yes. But the problem is again in that case, if this thing is dynamic or not, the number of statement that you have written inside the code is dependent on this or not. If it is not dependent on that, then again the time complexity will be constant on it. So for example, what I'm trying to say is that suppose SOP you have written it like 5 times. Let's say copy again. Like this you have written. And if this thing is not dynamic, this thing is not dependent on the input size, right? It's just like 5 times you have written. Okay. In that case, again, this number of line execution will always take a constant time. It is independent of the input size. Even if you put n equals to 1 million, this number of lines still remains 6. And whether you put n equal to 1, n equals to 2, n is equal to 5, n equal to 10, or n is equal to 1 million, the number of times that you have put SOP will be always a fix. So still I'll say that the number of operations that I'm doing is not dependent on the input size. So my number of times, the time that it will take, it will be constant. So again, the time complexity will be constant. But if the number of SOPs that you're writing inside a function is dynamic and is dependent on n, so if it is 5, then you are writing SOP 5 times. If it is n, then you're writing SOP 10 times. If it is 1 million, then you're writing SOP 1 million times. In that case, the number of SOP is dependent on the input size. So then I say that it is linear, right? And how do you do it? For that, you'll have to write a loop. It's not possible dynamically to write the SOP by just, so in that case, the time complexity will be constant itself. I guess that answers your question.
Okay.
Cool. Now let's take another example. This, I just copy this. Okay. And what I do is that can you tell me what is the time complexity of this now?
N by 2.
N by 2. Who said this? Can you please, Ashutosh, you said this?
Yeah.
Okay, Ashutosh is saying N by 2. I'll just come one over by one other. Sai Kiran, what do you think? Ashutosh is right or he is wrong? If it is wrong, then you have to tell me what do you think is the right one?
Yeah, so the way I look at it is in n by 2 times only the execution will happen. By the time it executes more than that, it will fail.
Okay.
It will come out of the loop. So it must be n by 2.
So it is plus 1 by Sai. Okay, perfect. This was the Kiran's answer. Okay. Then Sai, how about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's n by 2 only in this case.
Okay. So again, Sai is also the Ashutosh. Manoj?
Yeah, for me also it is n by 2 only, because like it's multiple, it's multiplying the 1, 2, 4 like that it will go. So at the end, like if suppose we have the input of 8, it will go only 3 times, something like that. Not 3 times exactly, but similar to that. So it will be come total of n by 2 only.
Okay, got you. Paritosh, what do you think?
N by 2 me as well.
Pari also. And then who left? Vivek, what do you think?
Yeah, it would be n by 2.
Okay, perfect. So I'm hoping that you guys didn't go with the flow. Always try to move with the flow. Avoid moving with the flow. So unfortunately, every one of you who have said the answer is wrong. Okay. And before we discuss about the problem, if I say that what I talked about time complexity, a time complexity is proportional as how number of executions will be proportional to the input size. Okay, this is the definition of the time complexity. And that is why I said the time complexity is very important. It's one of the most misunderstood things. People take it for granted. They know that They simply feel that they know what time complexity is, but and they would have mostly overlooked this topic, and that is why this confusion happens. If you go in any good company, right? For example, I'll take example of Google. Okay, one of the most standard interview that the Google takes, right? So one of the beauty about the Google interview is that they put a lots of stress in figuring out the time complexity of every problem that you solve. And when you say that, okay, my time complexity is O of n, they will not just stop there. They will ask you, what do you understand by the time complexity O of n? So unless until you understand in the depth what the meaning of time complexity is, first of all, you're not able to write the correct time complexity. And even if you do, you'll not be able to explain that. So that is why I wanted to put this, and I feel that this was very important. So let's try to understand this. Please pay a very good focus on this question, and the next question I'll expect you guys to solve that. Okay. So this is the definition. Time complexity is how many number of executions will be proportional to the input size. Let's try to see how many executions are happening in this. Okay, mathematically, let's try to understand. So since I is getting multiplied by 2 every time, if it was not the case, if suppose I was getting incremented by 1 every time, then in that case the number of operations would have been almost equal to n. Agree everyone? If I was getting incremented by 1 every time, in that case the number of operations would have been proportionally equal to the n. Right? Agrees everyone?
Yeah.
But in this case, this I is getting multiplied by 2 every time. So the number of operations, if suppose now if number of operations is k, that's it, k will be less than n. Everybody agrees k will be less than n. If suppose now this I is getting multiplied by 2 every time, I say okay, k is my total number of operations, or k is total number of time the loop will run, the k will be less than n. Everybody agrees?
Yeah.
Cool. So basically we have to first figure out what this is, what the k is. Okay, so let's try to understand. When the first time the loop was running, right, the value of I was how much? The value of I was 1, right? When the second time the loop was running, the value of I was 2, right? When the third time it ran, the value of I came out to be, right, 2 to the power of 2, right? When the fourth time it came as a value of I was equal to 2 to the power of 3, right? Like this. So initially it was 2 to the power, this is equal to 2 to the power of 0, and this was equal to 2 to the power of. Everybody is with me? So far so good?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So suppose I say that it has went for the k times, right? So the kth time when the loop will be running, at that time the value of I will be what equal to? I will be equal to 2 to the power of k minus 1. Everybody agrees?
Yeah.
Okay. So this loop is running for the k times, right? So at the k time, the value of I was equal to this, right? And at that time, when the loop will terminate, the value of I will become what equal at when loop terminates, I will be equal to greater than equal to n. Everybody agrees? Because till the time I value is less than n, this loop will keep on running, right? Yes?
Yeah.
So when the loop terminates, the value of I will be greater than equal to n, right? Now the value of I at that time was what? 2 to the power k minus 1, right? Greater than equal to n, right? Now it is 2 to the power k minus 1 and greater than equal to n. I am talking about the proportionality, right? Whenever we talk about the proportionality, we talk about the approximate. So what I can do is that in order to find how k is dependent on the n, I take log both sides, right? So what will happen? K minus 1 will be greater than equals to log of n, right? So I can say that k is almost equals to log of n. So how the k, so see, the complexity is all about finding the proportionality, right? If there's something is proportional to something, if you add a constant or divide or multiply by a constant or divide by a constant or subtract by a constant, the constant doesn't change the proportionality. So if k minus 1 is proportional to the log n, I will also say that the k is also proportional to log n. So the number of operations is how it is proportional to the input size. It is proportional logarithmically, right? So that is why the time complexity here will be log of n.
Vishwa, I
Yeah.
have a question.
Yeah.
I'm not clear about the log which we are applying here. I
Okay.
mean, I know the k minus 1 is greater than or equal to n, but how come it
No,
become
no, no,
log
no,
n?
no. K minus 1 is not greater than or equal to n. It is 2 to the power
Yeah,
k.
yeah, 2 power. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay, so basically it's a normal log operation. So what the log says is that, you know, if for example, if now it's if suppose a to the power k, if you write like this, okay, and if you take a log of that, log of this, okay, then this will be equal to k. This is what the log says. This is the theorem of the logarithm says. Okay, so what I did here is, if I take a log to the base a and a to the power of k, what it will return is k. This is the log theorem. Okay, this is the basic mathematics log theorem. Okay, so now since I have an exponent here in the left hand side and n on the right hand side, so what I do, I take log base to both sides. I take log base to both the sides. So what was returned? What was that was left in the power? So I was left k minus 1 on the left hand side and log of n on the right hand side. Is it clear? It's just a log function. This is the theorem of the log theorem.
Okay.
Okay. So in order to solve this mathematical equation, I take the log both on the side. Took the log both the sides. So what I got in the left was k, and the right what I got is log of n. So now I can say that now k is proportional to log of n. So that is why the time complexity is logarithmic log of n.
Vishwa, so linear time is always greater than the logarithmic time, right?
Yes, the linear time is always greater than the logarithmic time. Anybody, any doubt here?
Yeah, Vishwa, Kiran over here.
Yeah.
So the same thing, what you said, I derived and I was getting something like k greater than or equal to log of 2 times n minus 1. So is that the same thing what we were looking over here?
What were you getting? Can you please come again?
K was greater than or equal to log of 2 times n minus 1.
Log of 2 times
N minus 1.
2 times n minus, like this you're saying?
Yeah.
How did you get this?
So it's basically like what you said, 2 power k minus 1 is greater than or equal to n, right? I applied logarithms and it was like 2 power k is greater than or equal to 2 times n, right?
2 to the power k minus 1 is greater than or equal to n. This is the equation. Yes.
So that means 2 power k is greater than or equal to 2n.
2 to the power k is greater than or equal to 2n. Yes.
And then I applied log over both the sides.
Yeah. So basically, yes. So what I'm trying to say is that so again, let's talk about little proportional. Let's talk about little mathematics again. So if I say that, you know, if a is proportional to say b, if a is say proportional to b, and see, this time complexity is always a proportionality analysis. You always talk about proportionality. You don't talk about the exact term. Okay? When I say a is proportional to b, it means that a will be also proportional to k times b. Okay, a will also be proportional to, you know, k times b plus c, plus minus c. Okay, so if you multiply or add or subtract any constant with the term, the proportionality doesn't change. So even if you go in that direction and solve the same thing, still you are just multiplying and adding or subtracting the constant from it. So still you can say that the k is still proportional to the n. So that is why k is log n.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah. So when I derive the same thing, I'm getting log of 2n minus 2. In that case, how do I conclude the complexity?
So basically, if you go to that 2n minus
2
like this, now in this your 2 is a constant, this 2 is a constant, right? So if the value of n increases, the k will also increase. The value of n decreases, the k will also decrease. So k is dependent on the logarithmic of n. This 2 and 2 are the constant which will just adding a filler, right? It doesn't change your proportionality. You still say the time complexity is log of n. You never said 2. So whenever, you know, even if you are dependent on n by 2, you always say the time complexity is order of n. You don't say time complexity is order of n by 2, because Time complexity is just the proportionality. You don't put the constants in. You just see that how, what is the value of the variable. So it's n only, right? So you say that k is directly proportional to log n. You just remove the constant and just say that k is proportional to log of n. Because the constant doesn't change the proportionality.
Okay.
Make sense? Because then n increases, the k will increase, n decreases, the k decreases. It doesn't depend on 2 and 2. The constant doesn't have a say in this. So whenever we talk about the proportionality, we can drop the constant and we only talk about how one variable is dependent on the another variable, right? So that is why in this question, the time complexity is equal to number of operations, which is k, and k is proportional to the logarithmic time n. So the time complexity of this problem will be log of n. Everybody is clear on this? Tell me, because the next question that I'm going to ask will test you on this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Vivek, what is the time complexity of this?
It will be n.
It will be n.
Yeah,
Half of n square.
Oh, 1 second. O of n square or O of n?
O of n.
Okay, I'll move on. Pi, what will be the?
It will be, I think it should be O of n only, because in inner for loop it is a breaking for each.
Stop. So don't tell the reason as of now. Okay, I'll just want to listen the first one.
Okay.
Everybody agrees with O of n. Anybody who doesn't agree can tell me now. Anybody who feels it will not be O n. Somebody was telling O of n square.
Half of n.
How much?
N by 2.
See, again, n by 2 is not a time complexity, as I already mentioned, right? There's no point of adding if it is n by 2, it means order of O of n itself, right? Because the time complexity is about the proportionality. You don't put the constant. So if something time complexity is O of n by 2, it means it is O of n only. So O of n by 2 and O of n is not different. Both are same on.
Vishwa, hi.
Yeah.
Parikasha.
Yeah.
Don't you think that since we have used two loops, then this would be O of n square?
Yeah, so this is what I wanted to, with this question, I wanted to, same thing. So, see, most of the folks, they have been so used to figuring out time complexity based on the loops, so that they just see the loop and say that this is the time complexity. If they will see a single loop, they will say it is O of n. If they see two nested loop, they will say O of n square. And if they see three, they said O of n cube. And it's not your mistake. Actually, this is how you have been, doing all the time, and this is how you have been taught. But that is not the case. The time complexity is nothing to do with the loops that you have written. The time complexity has only to do how many times you are doing the operations, right? Why I see the two loops. So, for example, I'll take another example and I'll come here so that it makes more sense.
Vishwa, just 1 second.
Yeah.
Okay, you go on.
Yeah, tell me. Go ahead. No problem.
Basically, my understanding was, see, in the nested loops, when you use nested loops, so the inner loop will run with respect to the outer loop, what the values are being used. Like, say, for example, even if there is one iteration, the inner loop will run that much of time. So in that case,
you're right. So in that case, that is why it is O of n square. So same thing I was going to repeat here. So for each value of I in the outer loop, the inner loop will run n times. Right? In this case, for each value of I in the outer loop, the inner loop will gonna run for n times. And the outer loop is again going to run for n times. So the total number of operation that will happen here is O of n square. So that is why the time complexity here will be O of n square. But here there's a little trick, right? So every time for each value of the outer loop, when it goes inside the for loop, it does a break statement. Okay, but because maybe you are not aware of this sentence, because of which it might have confused you. So break, what it does is that whenever you put a break, it takes you out of the for loop. I think it is true for any language as such. Whenever you use a break statement, it takes it out of you for loop. So for every outer iteration, for every value of I in the outer loop, the inner loop is running only once. It is not running n times here. So that is why effectively the total number of the times the loop is running is n only here, not O of n square. That is why the time complexity is linear and not n square. Does it answer your question, Paritosh? Is it clear?
Yeah.
It is O of n here. It is O of n here because the inner loop is getting break. We are using a break syntax here, and what the break does is, as soon as it goes the first time, itself it comes out of the loop. So for every value of I in the outer for loop, inner is running only once, and because of which the inner for loop breaks. And that is why effectively the total number of operations that is happening in this is only n times. So that is why the time complexity is order of n. Make sense? Is it clear?
Yeah.
Cool. I'll take one example and then I'll move to the next topic and I'll give you some assignments on the time complexity solving. But this I feel you have enough concept and you should be able to solve all the questions that I'll be giving in the assignment. So the next question will be around just not put the question or I'll put the question later. Okay. Can you tell me what is the time complexity of this? This is a very famous algorithm. Can you tell me, anybody tell me what is this algorithm?
Binary search.
This is binary search. Perfect. What is the time complexity of this? What is the time complexity of binary search? It's very common, no?
Login.
Perfect. Log n. So the time complexity of the binary search algorithm is log n, right? Normally, when you search in an array, by normally it is linear time. So that is why we prefer binary search because it does the searching in the log of n time. But why log of n?
It's getting halved every time.
Getting half every time. So getting half every time, how does it relates to log?
Yeah, so it's like suppose 8 is the input and we have 8 the length of the array, and we have to check it. So every time we'll just take the half of the 8, then it will become 4, and so it's nothing but we are just dividing the power. So earlier the power was 2 power 3 and now it became 2 power 2 and then 2 power 1, like that it is.
Perfect, perfect, very nice. So the same theory that we talked about here, the same thing applies here also. And again, if you have to visualize much better into the mathematical terms, suppose the initial size of the input was n, right? So next time it will become equal to n by 2. After that, it will become equals to n by 4. After that, it will become equals to n by 8. So every time the input size is getting divided by 2. And if you see, this is a series of log of n. Okay. So the series of log n is 1, n by 2, n by 4, n by 8, n by 16, like this. So that is why we say that the time complexity here will be log of n, because at any moment of time, the number of operations that we can do, the number of operations that we'll be doing will be log of n. So that is why the time complexity of the binary search is log of. Any doubt, guys, so far in the time complexity? So just one rule that you have to follow. Don't go with your gut feeling while finding the time complexity. Always try to think logically. Try to figure out how many operations are happening. Okay, and then try to relate how it is proportional to the input size. If you can do it, you can figure out correctly time complexity in each and every problem. Right? So this is the only thing that you have to do. The takeaway from this is that never just look at the loop and say that this is the time complexity. Always try to figure out that how many times actually the number of operations are happening, how many times the number of operations are happening proportional to the input size. In many of the questions that we'll be discussing in our future, seats, you will look at two loops, and also there will be no break as such. Right now I gave the break, which was a very direct hint. There will be no break as such, but still the number of operations will be only linear only. So you will have to have a you have to develop the practice of visualizing this, how many number of operations are actually happening proportional to the input size, and that is the only way you can figure out the correct time complexity, right? And this is very important. So going onwards, any problem that I'm giving you as an assignment, every problem you have to tell me what is the time complexity. Make sense? Is it clear? Can we move on?
Yeah.
Cool. Since we are talking about the time complexity, there's another concept known as the space complexity. Now, between the time and the space, always the time is giving due importance, because the time is one of the most crucial thing these days. The space, I don't think anybody in this the current context is much worried about the space, because hardware or the storage is one of the most cheapest thing available right now. So people don't give much weightage to the space. But said that, as far as the interviews are concerned, people will always ask you to optimize on the space as well. So what is the space complexity? The space complexity also you can define the same way. How how your extra space that you're using in your algorithm is dependent on the input size, right? This is the meaning of the space complexity. How the extra space that you have used in your algorithm depending on the input size, this is known as the space complexity. So for example, for public wide and so the problem statement of this is that you have to add hello n times in one array, right? So for this you define an integer array first. So array equals to int, and then you write a loop here, right? And inside the loop you add value of I equals to say hello, like this. Suppose I'm not writing the full syntax just to save time. In the case you did not, please let me know. So what this function is trying to do is that based on the input size, I'm storing the hello n times in the new array, right? So so this is the extra space that I'm using in this particular method, and this size of this extra space is directly proportional to the size of the input, right? So that is why I say here the space complexity will be order of n. So again, space complexity is nothing but how your extra space that you're utilizing in your function is dependent or proportional to the input size. If you know that, you can be easily able to figure out what your space complexity is. If I'm trying to create two-dimensional array here instead of single dimensional array here, right, like this, now based on the input size n, I'm occupying the n squared space. So here the space complexity will become equal to O of n squared, O of n squared. So based on how the input size, how much extra space that we are going to use or utilize will count to space complexity. Everybody is clear on this, what the space complexity is?
Yeah.
Cool. So we still have some time left. Actually, I wanted to cover recursion, but I don't want to do that. Okay, let me do one thing. I'll give you a basics of recursion. I'll ask you a few basic questions on the recursion as the assignment, and then we'll take the advanced concept of the recursion in the next session. So let's talk about recursion now. Okay. So I believe that you guys are already working in the industry, so iteration thing will already be clear to you guys, and recursion will be also be clear. So can you tell me what is when you write recursion, what are the things that you should take care of most important?
Exit condition.
Exit condition. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So I'll take it a very simple example. So And before that, I'll just try to create a structure. So any problem that you solve in the recursion, any problem, it will be a simple, medium, or very hard or very complex. Every problem you do only three things. The first and the most important thing, this is the first step in your recursion code, is that you write an exit condition, exit or the termination condition. The second thing that you do is you write the logic, right? So every problem will have a different logic to solve. So you write that logic to solve that problem. And the third thing is that you do a recursive call. This is very important. So the third thing that you do is that you make a recursive call with the increase or the decrease size in the input. But when you increase or decrease the size of the input in a recursive call, you have to maintain the constraint. You cannot violate the constraints. We'll understand with the example what I mean that I cannot violate the constraints. So, but any question that you solve with the recursion will have only three things. One is the exit and the termination condition. This will be the first and the starting point. The second thing is the logic that you write. And the third thing is the recursive call by maintaining the constant. So for example, I'll take one example. So for example, suppose I have been given an array, say like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have to print using recursion. Okay. I'll take one smaller input so that. Okay. So when I do this, let's write the function for this: public void print array recursion. Okay, and it started. Okay, so what I have done is that I have taken a function and it takes an array and it is given what is the starting index right now. Okay, so in the recursion, the three things I have to write first. One is the termination condition, the second one is the logic, and third one is the recursive call. So first I write the exit condition. Can you guys suggest me what should be the exit condition of this?
If the index matches the length of the array.
Okay, if start
of the array
is equal to array.length, this you are saying?
If the index we are currently iterating reaches the end of the array.
So end of the array is array.length only, no? This minus 1 you are saying? This? What should I do?
It will not iterate further.
It will not iterate further, so I'll just do a return like this.
You just have to keep iterating till the length -1 of the array from the starting value.
No, I'm saying what is the exit condition that I put. So I'm asking you right now, I got your point that we have to iterate till the last element, that is correct. But in the exit condition, what should I, as I said in the recursion, the first condition that I should put is the exit condition. So what should be the value in the exit condition? I'm asking that.
Start index equal to array.length and return.
Okay. Then return. Okay. This is what you're saying, exit condition. Fine. Anybody who doesn't agree with Ashutosh? Everybody agrees? Perfect. So this sounds good. Even if this is greater than equal to, then also it should return, right? If the array starting index is greater than equal to array.length, then it should. The next thing that I need to do is that I have to write the logic. What should be the logic here? The logic is just the printing of the element. So I can just do system dot out dot print. So this is my logic here. And the last one is the recursive call. So in this, I can just simply call the recursive function again.
Or are we going to increment the start index also?
Yeah, I'm doing that. Yes, I'm doing that. Okay, right. So this is what I'm doing. Right. So the three steps I have done. I have just written the exit condition. So this means when I have already the start index is beyond the length of the array, it means I have iterated through all the elements. The second one is that I'm printing that element, and the third one is I'm doing a recursive call. So this is how any recursive. This is a very simple example, but any recursive problem that you solve, you have to solve like this. So one assignment here itself. Right now I have printed 1, 2, 3. Right? So it will print like 1, 2, 3 itself. 1, 2, 3. Right? You have to use. Yeah. 1 second. Well, let me complete the assignment, then I'll take your question. Okay. Otherwise, I'll forget it. Okay. So you have to use the same method definition. Okay. You have to use the same method definition like this, but the assignment is you have to print array in reverse order. Okay, so 1, 2, 3 is there. So if it is 1, 2, 3 is there, you have to print 3, 2, and 1. Okay. The definition of the method doesn't changes. You will be only given the start index and you will be given the array, but you have to print it in the reverse order. Yeah. Now you tell me what you're asking.
Can we use the recursive call prior to the logic?
Yes, you can do it. You can do it. So it all depends on you. It all depends on how do you want to use it. So basically, these things will get clear when you solve this. No, actually, this is a very important concept, right? And this I'm going to cover in the advanced concept of the recursion in the next session, right? So we'll take this up. That what is the advantage of that? When do we use it, and how it internally impacts the memory utilization of the stack trace that a recursive call forms. So we'll take this up. I think this is a very important concept that when should we use it, before and after that.
One
Yeah.
question, like say this recursive function, what you have written, and what the time complexity we had discussed earlier. So the first time complexity question, what you use for the loop, linear O log O of n. Now in this case, I just wanted to just clear this. Here also, like we are in a way, depending upon the inputs and the index, we are printing the value. So in this case also, the time complexity would be O of n for the recursive function.
Yes, this was the next thing that I was about to ask you, but you had asked the question for my behalf. So what will the time complexity? This will be again order of On, because as you see, the number of times the operation is happening is based on the input of the size of the array, right? Because every time we are incrementing the size of the input by +1. So here the time complexity will be O of n. But suppose if I was incrementing the array index by 2 all the time, so in that case, what would happen? The time complexity? The time complexity would happen log of n, right? Make sense? So again, the time complexity doesn't matter whether it's a loop or whether it's a recursion. It depends on how many operations that you are doing based on the input size.
So Vishwa, just one more question. Like if the time complexity for a given problem with recursion and with using loop is the same, and it provides, and if in both the segment, if we are using the same approach, then why it is said that using we should use recursion? It's a better form of representation of coding.
So I think you have a little. So I don't agree to this. So in the case, if you can solve the same problem using both recursion as well as the iterative approach, iterative is most preferred way of solving the problem, because when you solve the problem through the recursion inherently takes some extra space. So right now you have not used any extra space, right? But the space complexity of this problem is O of n. We'll talk about this, like how the space complexity has come out of O of n, and we discuss about the internals of the the recursion. But whenever you can solve the same problem using the recursion, and you can save the same problem using the iteration, and the space is of your concern, then you should always avoid recursion and use the iterative. But said that, there's another school of thought which says that between the recursion and the iterative, we should choose recursion. The reason for that is recursive solution is more intuitive. Okay, recursive solution is more intuitive, and sometimes it helps you to solve the same problem with a lesser number of lines. And also sometimes solving a problem through the iterative becomes very, very, very complex. But we solve the same problem using the recursion, it becomes very simple. Example, one of the classic example of that is Tower of Hanoi, which we'll take up in the next session. If you guys would have solved it, then you would have realized that if you solve Tower of Hanoi with recursion, it gets solved only 3 lines of code. But if you do it with iterative, it becomes a very complicated problem, right? So sometimes based on the problem use case also, it gets really tough to solve it iteratively. So in those cases, you go with the recursive. And example, in the case of the tree, right? The tree, if you solve in the iterative, it's not very intuitive. But when you solve it with the recursion, it's very intuitive. It becomes very simple. So that is how you prefer solving tree problem using the recursion. But said that, if you can solve a problem using the iteration and the recursive, and you have some space constraint, you always choose iterative because it's more space optimized compared to the recursion. Why it is? We'll talk about the logic in the next session. Make sense?
Yes.
Perfect. So I was saying that you have to do an assignment in which the method signature remains the same, but you have to print the array in the reverse order. Okay. In the sheet also, I'll just mention this question, which I'm gonna share you in a while. So I'll just stop it here. Okay, so today's session, we just had an introduction of that what all things we're going to cover in this whole data structure journey. We started with the time complexity. I feel now we have given you enough context to think little out of box whenever you have to calculate the time complexity thing. And then we talked about the basic structure of the recursion. We have just scratched the cover of the recursion. There's so much more into the recursion which we'll see in the next session. I'll give you some basic problems on the recursion so that you have a good practice before we move on the more complicated problems on the recursion in the next session. Any doubts, any questions, any concern? This is the first session. I'd like to take your feedback. How is the speed going on? Are you guys getting it? Any problems in understanding? Please feel free to talk to on the face so that I can improve on, or you want to add anything else. How is it going? Did you like the first session? Please, I'll try to take few minutes to get your feedback so that we can improve.
Vishwa? Well, I just wanted to say that okay, I'm okay with the speed, but if the concepts have been depth, if they are in depth, so can you just slow down sometime in future.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Sure. Definitely, we'll take care of that. But again, said that we have some limitation on the time as well. So what I expect from you guys is that whatever the concept which I feel is complicated and something which really requires lots of stress, I'll put that stress on that. But at the same time, few of the things I'll ask you guys to go back, which doesn't require much of the thinking. It's just few of the theoretical concepts. I'll ask you guys always after the end of to go back and brush up those things so that you ask better questions and you don't waste time of this session. So this is what our expectation will be. So all the things that is needed, which I feel is that it's not there adequately explained in the concepts on the internet or on the books. I'll be covering that for sure in the sessions. Few things like sorting algorithm. So I'll be talking about the implementation of the sorting algorithm, but the basic sorting algorithm I'll expect you guys to go and read and come back so that in the class we talk about the next higher advanced implementation of the sorting algorithm. So those things I'll try to, so that you also make the best use of this time, right? So we'll try to do the cover everything, but at the same time we'll try to build upon the skills that you already know. I don't want to just repeat the things that you already know, so that's not a value addition, right? So I want to do some value addition to your skill set so that after 2.5 months of time from now you should be confident enough that okay, I know something extra apart from what I was doing already earlier, right? That makes sense, Parishad? I think that should be fine. So I'm pretty much fine. Wherever you want me to slow down, I'll be more than happy to slow down and do the things in a much better way.
Yeah,
At the same time, I'll expect you guys also to take a little more extra effort. So wherever those few theoretical concepts which doesn't need so much of the concept, I'll ask you to go there and read and come back so that we do discuss those things, non-trivial things, trivial things here. Okay?
Yeah, Vishwa, this is Sai actually. What is the best way to practice these things? Because like previously when I used to do, people used to go with HackerRank and all these things. So like, is there any specific way we go with the practice of these things apart from the one which we are taught here?
So as of now, I'll tell you, don't go and practice on the internet as of now. Don't use Google. So any question that I ask you, sincerely asking you, don't go and Google for the solution for the question that I'm giving you. If you're not able to solve it, it's totally perfectly fine. Please ask me, because the question that I'll be giving you is just not the question, but it will be a kind of conceptual ones which will help you to solve 10 other questions also. So if you solve, I got your point. Let me complete. I got your point. What you said. So second point is how do you practice the problem? So I'll be giving you enough problems to practice as of now. So first of all, what you try to do is you solve all the problems that I'm giving you in the seats, and once this is done, then you are free to solve anything on the internet. Like we can go and solve on the HackerRank, HackerEarth. There are so many other coding competition sites. The reason right now I'm saying not to go and do on the Hacker or something like that, because we have not completed all the concepts. What happens is that you did one thing and then you start doing on the different coding competition sites. And if you're not able to solve it, you start getting demotivated. Oh, I'm not able to solve it. I'm not able to do it. I will not be able to do it. So those kind of demotivative things, further demotivates you and push you back. So I'll suggest let's try to have some foundation built, and then only you go and try the question on those sites so that you are able to solve those. Because those sites contains question which involves concept from the multiple areas, right? So unless until we have some solid foundation built, I suggest don't do as of now. Take some time, try to solve all the seed questions first, and then you are free to do anywhere, any side. Yeah, go ahead. I sorry to interrupt you in between. Actually, I wanted to complete my statement. Yeah, go ahead. You were saying.
Fine. Got it. That answers my thing.
Yeah, perfect. So what I've done is that I've tried to curate the questions from the different sources. Geek for Geeks, Lead Code, HackerRank, Interview Bits. I've been helping students on the Interview Bit for a long time now. I'm an official mentor on the Interview Bit as well. So I have tried to curate it from the multiple sources, and the question that I'll be giving you in the set is not only that one particular question, but if you solve one question, it will help you solve multiple other questions as well. So try to solve it religiously, and that's all. I think if you guys don't have any much doubt, so I'll stop it here.
Okay, I think there are no questions. So just to add to Vishwa's point, the course content and the questions that he was mentioning, I would like to add to that. So the questions the Vishwa is going to give and the content that we are going to prepare, it is not just taken from the platforms which are out there, right? But we have spoken to hundreds of interview candidates who have interviewed with, let's say, startups, with big companies, right? So if you go to our ASAP Jobs channel, ASAP Jobs Labs, you would find a lot of interview experiences, right? So we have integrated all those experiences, all those questions, the areas where people get stuck, right? And how should they practice, is everything is integrated into this course, so that you get a holistic view, right? So if you go to all these multiple platforms, those platforms are good. I'm not saying those are not good, but what I want to say is those platforms are not complete, right? So you might find certain good problems in certain area, but the other areas would lack, right? But in this course, we have tried to integrate all of that. Whatever we whatever we could find is important to crack the interviews in different set of companies, whether it is MNC or startup, right? Okay, guys, see you in the next class. Bye.
Sure.
Have a good day.